And that way I can keep track of what I need to keep track of. February is the month of not football, love. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad some of you guys are romantics. Every February we celebrate one of these holidays. Pink hearts, roses, chocolates. If you got a little bit extra, it's expendable income. You might go out and kind of splurge on a diamond. Okay, guys, don't do that. Do that, okay? All I'm trying to say is there is this holiday that we have set up to celebrate love, Valentine's. If there could be a Scrooge to Valentine's, I hate the holiday. Don't tell my wife I said that. Oh, there is one. For us guys, and for those of us who are not natural romantics, there is this like, oh, okay, what expectation? What am I supposed to do? How far should I go? What's too much? What's not enough? By the way, my go-to fix for everything is to buy chocolate. You know why? Because if it's good chocolate, I don't mind eating it too. Look, over this next month, I want to talk about a subject that we rarely discuss. Now, as we talk about this, if you guys, I know we're going to talk about love and marriage for this month, and I know there are some of you who've been married for so much longer than I have. I also want to say this. I know I do not have all the answers. Boy, don't ask my wife because she'll tell you I do not have all the answers. As we go through this, I want to say this. Some of you guys have a lot more insight on this than I do. I also want to say this. This is not intended. Some of the lessons that we learn from marriage actually apply to other relationships, not just marriage. It deals with relationships, dealing within families, dealing with coworkers. So I want to kind of stop and say, look, if you're married, if you're not married, if you've been married for 50 years, or you're saying never. Not doing that again. Been there, done that. I don't want to do that. Bear with us. Hang in there with us. I want to encourage you. We're going to try to deal with this in the best way that we can, not trying to pretend like I'm going to give you answers to things that I cannot. But one of the things I want to talk about as we begin to talk about love and Valentine's, I want us to start with this place that we all have been at least one time in our life. Whether you're married or not married, there has been a time when you have fallen in love. Do you remember that? If you are a Scrooge on Valentine's, I guarantee you there has been a time when it probably you were bringing flowers. Do you remember that time? Do you remember that time when you would stop and you would obsess over the way your hair was combed? Because just maybe if your hair was not combed quite right, they would look at you like you were weird. You would obsess over the way your clothes were ironed, your shoes were clean. You would sit and you would hang on to every word that other person said. You would stop and you just kind of realized that that person that you had found in that moment, they were the smartest, the wisest. I mean, they were the kindest, most intelligent, observant, because they stopped and listened to you. Do you remember that moment? Some of you going, no, that's too far back. Can't remember that. I'm choosing not to remember that because, I was over the top. Now, as we start this series, let's just be honest, all right? I'm going to kind of deal with this from a reality point of view. If you have ever been in love, if you are married, here's what we all learn at some point after we get married. All right, you ready? Now help me out if I'm wrong. Number one, commitment changes everything. Doesn't it? Let's just kind of be, all right, I'm going to be just, one of the things that you realize, he was not as funny as he thought he was. They don't care how I comb my hair. That thing that I thought was so cute, it's actually kind of annoying. You know what I'm talking about? Commitment changes everything. Now, okay, just bear with me. You know this. You've been there. Number two, change is both constant and yet never happens. What do I mean by that? When you're dating, carefree, footloose, fancy-free, I don't know, whatever you call it. Commitment, responsibility. Spend my money any way I want to. There are bills that have to be paid. You guys know what I'm talking about. At the same time, commitment is constant and it will continue. By the way, the longer you are together as a couple, that change is constant. It goes from new houses, new bills, new responsibilities, and the older you get, they just keep coming, don't they? At the same time, change never happens. If you married a person thinking you were going to save them from something, what do we realize? We know this. It doesn't happen. If a person was angry before they got married, guess what they're going to be after you get married? If a person has a hang-up, doesn't have a job, and doesn't want to get a job before marriage, guess what's going to happen after you get married? Change is both constant and yet never happens. We've been there. Commitment changes everything. Change is constant and never happens. And number three, life is, if you ever want to see how complicated life can get married. But you know this. Because for most of you, you've either been there, done that, doing that, dealing with it. Can I say this? I may be a big Valentine Scrooge, but I actually believe in love. I believe that marriage is the greatest gift that God has given to us. I want to start by saying this. As we start this brief series, I am a realist when it comes to marriage. I believe in it. I love it. I recommend it to everyone. But I'm also a realist. I'm going to say two things. Number one, if you find your life partner, if you are in love, finding your life partner is the greatest gift that God can give to you. But I'm also a realist. I also know that finding love has also brought more pain and hardship for people. And I don't want to negate that. I don't want to stop and try to pretend like it's not real or not true. So we're going to talk about it. According to a website called divorce.com, this idea of marriage, we believe it to be one of the greatest gifts that God gives us. But we also know there are struggles that have to be dealt with. According to divorce.com, approximately 50% of all first-time marriages end in divorce. Now, I don't need to tell you this because we already know this. For so many people who've had to walk this road, you know this is not an easy road. We still believe in love, but we know that it is difficult and is hard. Number two, it doesn't get easier. You don't stop and say, I made a mistake one time, let's get it right the second. It doesn't get easier. You guys know this. The statistics say this: second-time marriages, 67% will still end in divorce. The statistics don't get better the more times we get married. In fact, third marriages, 73% of all third marriages end in divorce. Look, all I'm trying to say is this. You know this better than I do. Hallmark movies stop at the wedding day because, why? Because life is complicated. It's hard. You see, what we are led to believe from the moment we read the fairy tales, Cinderella, Rapunzel, is that we are led to believe that there is a happy ever after. And yet we know, because we've all been there at times in our lives and we see the statistics, and if we haven't been through it, we know a family member who's been through it, that says love is painful and it is hard. But I want to be very clear, as we deal with this series is not about doom. It is about how do we stop and say, we may not believe in a happy ever after. Instead, we believe there is something better. We believe that there can be a happy even after. Now, how do we get to this spot of going, okay, if the happy ever after is not, that's a fairy tale, how do we get to the point where we can be happy even after? How can they make a Hallmark movie about me after my marriage? Let's go through this real quick. The process of staying happy in love even after comes down to a couple of things. And so we're going to do a short series. It's only going to be these 4 weeks. But all good, happy, even after processes starts with a feeling. Once upon a time, one boy, one girl, two hearts beating wildly. To put it mildly, it was love at first sight. He smiled, she smiled. They knew right away. Okay, you know where I'm going with this. To stay in love, happy even after, must start with a feeling. He told a joke, she chuckled. She flicked her hair, and his heart raced. Can I just say this real quickly? We may smile at it because we've all been there. And we kind of look back at it and we go, yeah, those were the days. Don't let me do that again. That was a bit embarrassing. Can I just say this? God gave us those emotions. Those feelings that God gave us at a point in our life are wonderful. God gave us those. And those memories that we hold of that time when we were in love are precious memories that we should cherish. God made the act of falling in love a part of what we do. Now, you know we can't continue to live on the floating on clouds and my heart skips a beat and I can't breathe and I can't eat. We know we can't live there. But God gave us this moment of our lives for a purpose. And in fact, real quickly, he allowed a book to be written in the Bible that deals with nothing but this whole emotion of falling in love. Now, let me just be very clear. Solomon wrote this book. Now, Solomon may not be the best and the wisest guy to follow when it comes to how to make your marriage work. Just saying, he had a few too many wives and got himself into lots of problems. But as Solomon wrote this book, he deals with an emotion that we all understand. In fact, God allowed this book to be preserved for us so that for whatever reason, we can relate, I guess. I don't know. Let's just go real quick. Just tell me if you can relate. I'm not going through the book of Song of Solomon because there might be some books that should be censored in church, and this might be one of them. Maybe this will cause you to go home and read your Bible. Okay, just saying. But I want to give you kind of what Solomon began to tell us. In Song of Solomon, chapter 1, tell me if you can remember these days. There is a story about a young guy and a young girl who are falling in love. She's this young Shulamite girl. She's a shepherdess. The young man is Solomon. He is a king and a very powerful man. The story is Hallmark-ish if we could ever have one. Read it. I'm not going to, but I'm going to give you the start to kind of give you to set this story up. All right. Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. You can remember this day. In fact, it almost sounds like a song. And then, okay. She says to the young, handsome king who has so much, he's interested in me. This is what she says. Kiss me once, kiss me twice, kiss me one more time. Okay, no, almost. Kiss me and kiss me again. For your love is sweeter than wine. How pleasing is your fragrance. Your name is like the spreading fragrance of scented oils. No wonder all the young women love you. Now, I just say this. That last little phrase should tell you something that should stop and have been a warning to her. All the young women love you. That should have been this may not have been the best relationship to be involved with, but this is the story of a young woman and a young man falling in love and that feeling of emotion they have towards each other. Do you remember that time? Kiss me again. You smell so good. Now, the young guy in all of he's a poet. Right? Solomon is a poet, and he knows how to answer her. He responds, you are as exciting, my darling, as a mare among the Pharaoh stallions. You're like a fine thoroughbred, darling. Okay, I don't recommend that sort of word, but these are his words. And it's just this emotion. You've been there. How lovely are your cheeks. Your earrings set them afire. How lovely is your neck enhanced by a string of jewels. You're so gorgeous. Your lips, your cheeks, your neck. Okay, we're just saying. It gets a little hot and heavier than this. You want a chance to read your Bible and go, should the Bible be edited? Okay, just saying. Read your Bible. The stories are amazing. God intended that physical and emotional attraction is a part of our relationship. So if you want to start with living a happy, even after marriage, can I just recommend you find your spouse wonderful? It's a good place to start. We know, though, that emotional feeling cannot last. God never intended it to last. Now, I hope you always find your spouse attractive. I hope you always feel an emotional connectedness to your spouse. But that feeling of heart racing, I cannot think clearly, I'm telling you, you look like a horse. Okay, that may not be the wisest thing to say. But in the moment, it seemed like, you know. Living happy even after starts with a feeling. However, this feeling, we are told, lasts on average between 6 months to at the most 2 years. God intended it this way because you still need to be able to go home and hold down a job. If you were to live the rest of your life with this kind of emotional feeling that we have, that we so celebrate, you wouldn't be able to hold down a job very well. Your mind would be all over the place. So as we start the series off, we are not discouraging or negating or saying you shouldn't have feelings for your spouse. But we know that love has to go beyond a passion, and love must go somewhere else. If we're going to live happy even after, there has to be something after the passion cools down. And thankfully, the one who made us gives us a clue on how we can begin to live a happy even after life. God saw and did something for us that is wonderful. We're told back in the book of Genesis that when God made man, he made him alone. And the problem is he woke up and he was alone and he was lonely. And God did something very special. He said, Adam, I see and I wanted you to realize how alone and lonely you are, that I want to make somebody special for you. I want you to go to sleep. And he puts him to sleep and he takes from Adam's side one of his ribs and he forms woman. Now, there's some things that we miss that are so important. Where did God take? From Adam's foot, he took a toe bone and he made Eve. No. From Adam's head, he took one of his skull bones and he made Eve. No. There's an act of symbolism that as we look through what we're being told, that what we are told is that God takes from his side as an equal partner and creates man and woman to be together side by side. One not above, one not under. All right, just keep that in mind. But in this moment, as he's doing this, God begins to tell us something of what he does that helps us to understand this idea of living happy even after. So in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, just as he does this, Moses tells us this, he gives us this little hint. And he says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, this explains. He didn't explain much. He just said from his side. He said, no, this act explains why a man leaves his father and his mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. Mark chapter 10, we read of this conversation that Jesus was having on the idea of divorce, and they were trying to get him to say, yes, men, go ahead, divorce your wives. And Jesus is being very careful. Understand this. There are times, and I hate to say this, and I hate to say this publicly, but there are times when divorce needs to happen. Don't let me, anyone who stands up front and says that of either side need to put up with whatever abuse that goes on, that's not what God calls us to. But as Jesus deals with this subject, he stops and they're trying to say, we should have the right to put away our wives because they have no legal right. And Jesus goes, whoa, hang on. This was not what God intended. He goes and he tells us a story, and I encourage you to go home and read it so you can get a bigger context of it. But he makes this comment one more time. But God made them male and female from the beginning of creation. This explains, man, he's just quoting Moses again. This explains why a man leaves his father and his mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united in one, since they are no longer two, but one. Jesus begins to tell us, Moses begins to tell us, that the act of beginning to learn to live happy even after is beginning to turn passion into purpose. The purpose that God intended for us to work on is to become one. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother, and they shall come together. And it's no longer two, but one. Now, let me really quickly just say this quickly, and I'm going to have to keep moving because we are almost out of time. But when God intended for two to become one, he was not trying to erase each other's personalities out. Instead, what he's dealing with is that my strength helps pick up the other side's lack. Their strength help pick up my lack. Together, we are stronger together than we are as individuals. You see, we struggle so much with this idea of marriage coming together as one because we are so afraid that we are going to lose our identity. By the way, you should never lose your identity in marriage. Your identity is what should help make your marriage stronger. We become afraid we're going to lose control, and no one wants to do that. Yet a prophet named Amos tells us something that we all know. Amos says this: can two people walk together without agreeing on the direction? The idea of two becoming one is the idea of coming together in a common direction. The purpose of coming together as one is the purpose of doing life together. Now, I've got a really short time, so just bear with me. We are going to fly, and if I miss something and you say, Pastor, I don't understand what you meant by that, feel free to ask me. By the way, I am once again not trying to tell you I have all the answers. I do not. You know as well as I do that life is complicated, life is journey. Things constantly change and never change. You know all this. But we know that God calls us, and if we're going to have a happy even after, we have got to have a purpose, and that purpose is to do life together. Everyone trying to do marriage as two individuals, as two ships sailing it doesn't work that way. It just will not work. Purpose requires intentionality, right? If you're going to do something on purpose, you have to be intentional about it. On purpose means it's done on purpose. We get this, okay? Where must we go if we're going to do life on purpose together? It starts with intentionally focusing on the we over the me. One of the hardest things that we strive, if you've ever tried to help a young person deal with marriage and this whole thing of coming together, one of the things that there's a struggle with is well, how much me time do I get now? I still want to go out and kind of party with the guys on the weekend. Okay, can I just say this? If you are not ready to give up the me time, don't try to do the we then. There is nothing wrong with remaining single. If God has made you with a desire to live a single life, be single. The reality is, though, is as we come together in a common purpose, it means the we must become stronger than the me. My friends need to stop being my friends, and they need to become our friends. If you have friends that cannot be our friends, I'm sorry, get rid of them. I don't mean this in any rude way. I don't mean this to be hurtful. But if you come to a place where, well, I don't want them to be our friends because we need our own. No. If they cannot be our friends, they don't need to be your friends. Just be careful with this. There has got to be the ability that the we becomes more important. There has got to be a time when you do fun things together. I know we all have our different personalities. We all like to do different things. But if you don't find fun things to do together, I guarantee you this, your partner will find someone else to do fun things with, and the person we do fun things with is the person our heart grows fond of. Let me just be clear. We know this, don't we? We needs to become purposeful, intentional, date nights, whatever it is. We need to be intentional about it. Number 2, there needs to be intentionality over our finances. Ooh, if you want to talk about what breaks up marriages faster than anything else, this is not me telling you how to control your finances. I'm just trying to tell you, if you want to know something that will cause more breakups in a marriage, let's talk about money, baby. Let's talk about who spends what. Let's talk about what belongs to who. Can I just say, if you're going to live a happy even after, you have got to come together on your finances. Who spends what? Whose money does it belong to? Is this my money and that's your money? I'm just saying, you need to talk about it. You need to come together so you have a common purpose. However you decide to do it, and I'm not telling you what's the right way to do it. What I'm trying to tell you is you need to be intentional about how you do it. How much money do you give to charities? You better be intentional about it. How much money do you spend on your fun things? You better be intentional about it, because if you are not in agreement, there will be separation. Number 3, I'm moving fast now because I've got to hurry. There must be intentionality in our families. When I talk about families, can I say there are 2 things that will break up families very quick? Mentioned in families. Number 1, parents. I know, because I've become a parent of a married person now, and it is so hard to say, James, shut your mouth and say nothing, because this is not your life. I don't want to. I know better. I've been there. I've done that road. I see where that. No, James, this is not your life. When we get married, the Bible makes it very clear, we leave our father and our mother and we become one. It's got to be a family. Second thing, if you think parents can complicate, well, we do as parents, we complicate. We don't mean to, but we can. But you want to know what really can complicate a new marriage? Put a kid on it. Woo! You've been there. I've been there. You want to talk about what can complicate? Hey, grandparents love kids. Parents want to give them back. What am I trying to say? If you are going to live happy even after, you have got to learn how to do life after kids. Who does the disciplining? How do you do the disciplining? What are you disciplining about? What is the purpose of disciplining? I mean, it comes complicated. Just you guys know. If you haven't been there, ask someone. They'll tell you. Number 4, I'm moving because I'm on 11 o'clock, so just bear with me. One more. There needs to be purpose in faith. Now, I know for so many of us, this is something we cannot walk back on, and I get it. And I'm not telling you if your partner's not a follower that go out and say, oh, no, I'm not telling you that. But what am I trying to say? Life gets complicated when we have relationships and commitments with others who do not share our faith. You ever tried talking? One of the things I find interesting is so many people begin to say, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what she believes. It doesn't matter what he believes. We can both do this. They can do, okay, it may seem like that when you have the fluttering heart and the dizzying emotions. But you know as well as I do, when you want to talk to someone about what God is doing in your heart, and you get them rolling their eyes at you, it hurts. It does not draw together. It begins to separate. And by the way, our faith is such an integral part of who we all are. When you want to talk to your spouse about what God has been laying on your heart, I think I should do this, and they're going, I don't even believe in God. Don't give me that rubbish. I don't want to talk about it. And you are left in this moment and this place of loneliness. God intended that your passion should last a lifetime. I hope God gives you. But if your passion is going to last a lifetime, you better have some purpose to back up the passion. Now, I'm going to say this. This is not, none of us get to live the perfect life, do we? None of us get to live the life that we dream of, that we imagine that was going to be the happy ever after. But what we can do is we can begin to move and push the needle in the right direction. I may not be able to change this. We may have disagreements on how we discipline the kids, but we can begin to at least agree on what do we want our kids? We can begin to push the lever in the right direction. By the way, I want to close with just these couple of questions. All right, I put a couple questions up here. All right, just as your homework for the week. Number 1, do I have it up there? I stopped it there. Okay. Here we go. I'll see if I can remember. I want you to think about this. What is your spouse's favorite thing? We're talking about doing life together, being one. So can I ask this? What is your spouse's favorite thing? Is it chocolate? Is there this I don't know. What is his favorite thing? Number 2. What is the one thing that you do that annoys the socks off of your spouse? What is the one thing that you do that stops and says, if I know this in the back of my mind that every time I do this, it really bugs them, and yet I kind of do it anyhow just because I can? I'm going to give you one more. Here you go. What are we asking? If there is one thing that you could do to move the dial in the right direction, I'm not saying you can change everything, but if there's one thing you can do to help make your relationship to be closer as a together, as a we instead of a me, what could be one thing you could do to move the dial in the right direction? Father, this morning as we pray, Lord, marriages are complicated. They're wonderful. They're great. They're one of your greatest gifts. And I'm so thankful for them. I'm so thankful that you allow us to do life together with someone special. But Lord, we do know that sometimes it is more complicated than we could ever imagine. Help us to learn how to begin to push the dial in the direction of how do we do life together as one. Not two people trying to make it in a marriage, but how do we do the two people coming together in a common direction for common purpose with intention in everything that we do. And I know we're never going to get it all right. But Father, may we continue to seek and to strive after ways that we can do it better. And we just want to